Hello Math 30-20-1. Continuing on, now we're going to multiply and divide rational expressions. And like we talked about, very, very similar to multiplying and dividing fractions, we're going to factor it out and then blow stuff up. So here is a list of learner outcomes and their standards and where they apply. All right, so continuing on, where do we go from here? Okay, so to multiply rational expressions, just making some rules, we need to make sure that we factor the polynomials in each numerator and denominator first. Given that a over b and c over d, these are fractions, two fractions, obviously all we ever have to do if we're multiplying together is multiply tops times tops and bottoms times bottom. But we divide out the common factors and leave the remaining factors in factored form. When you multiply rational expressions, follow the procedures. Now, again, we write it in factored form. So when we do that, that's the best part. Once you've factored it, you get to blow stuff up. Boom. Those are the things that divide out and become 1. A 2 with a 2, a 2 with a 2, a 3 with a 3, leaving behind simply 5 and 3 times 7. I don't know if you can see that. 5 and 3 times 7, which in simplest form, we can just leave like that, right? Now, I know that in junior high and so on, you would normally write this as 5 over 21, but here we're not going to do that, okay? We'll just leave it as 5 over 21. Oh, my smartboard doesn't want to write right now. Okay. How about when we have an example like this, where we're dealing with a rational expression, not just a fraction? Well, same thing. We multiply it out in factored form. We factor it all out. And look at how cool that is. But if you factor it out in its degree 1 components, right, we are left with nothing but blowing up. So what cancels out? Once we factored in simplest form, we divide out the common factors, 7 with 7, m's with m's, y's with y's, x with x's. What are we left with? A 16, a 2, a 7 and 5, and a y and an m. We can put that together and get 32x over 35my. Our non-permissible values that we talked about before come from our initial expression, and I'm hoping eventually that my pen will start working, but I'll just point to it. So we look back to the original expression to see what the undefined value or the non-permissible values are. Okay. Question number 2. What about we're multiplying this? Remember, please remember that when we're multiplying something like this, we cannot cancel terms. You might be very tempted to cancel x with x, as you can see here, or the x squared with x, but those are terms. It's not factored. You can't cancel that. You have to factor first. So you do. Your good factors, you remember in Math 10, I can factor the first factor, 7 over x plus 1, x plus 4. I factor this trinomial. I factor the bottom, okay, by pulling out a 7 and being left with x minus 7, x plus 1. So it was a common factor as well as a simple trinomial. Okay. Next thing you should do is, before you start blowing stuff up, list the non-permissible values. Okay, my non-permissible values are x can't be equal, -4, x can't be 7, and x can't be -1. Okay, those should be not equals, not equals. That's a bit of a typo. I blow everything I can up, and I'm simply left with x minus 5 over x minus 7. And my non-permissible values are -1, -4, and -7. A little note. To avoid making mistakes later on, make sure that you think about the non-permissible values before you blow stuff up, okay? And we talked about that in class. Your turn, whoopsie, your turn. I want you now to factor this, okay? So pause and fly on your own, okay? You've come back, and now I'm sure that you factored each trinomial, x plus 6, x minus 2, x minus 7, x plus 5. The bottom is x plus 6, x plus 5, and x plus 4. Your NPVs, they should be not equals, okay? And so you blow as much as you can up, and you're left with that simplified version. Now we carry on and we look at division. Remember division from fractions was that I will multiply by the reciprocal when I have division. Now you have to watch about non-permissive values. That's going to come into play here. But a over b divided by c over d is really a over b times d over c. You reciprocate the one you're dividing by. Okay, so you really end up with ab over dc. An example would be 2/3 divided by 3/4 is really 2/3 times 4/3. You really end up with 8/9 in that situation. Okay. So what about in this situation? Well, we follow the same rules. Dividing by that means I multiply by the reciprocal. And I factor and do the same things that I've been doing. So this really comes down, did we really solidify our understanding in factoring in Math 10 and Math 20? Because if we do, this is just fun stuff, factoring and blowing stuff up. I do need to remember to state the NPVs before I blow stuff up. So I really only left with x minus 1 over 5x and my non-permissible values. Okay. Please don't forget to list the non-permissible values. Multiplying and dividing, again, a little bit bigger question, but it follows the same rule. So pause now, and I think you're ready to fly on your own. Do this one on your own, okay? You notice that you've got some tough trinomials here that you need to be aware of. You should remember they're your factor trees that you built and you put on Mr. K's wall about your skills that look for common factor first, right? So there's some common factors in here. And now go off and do it yourself, okay? Now that you've come back, I'm not going to spend time really reviewing factoring here, but if you factored it like you're supposed to, then you should have multiplied by the reciprocal, sorry. And now when you factor this, you should have gotten these factors, okay? Obviously, there's your two factors here, there's your two factors for this one, and there's your two factors for the numerator here, and so on, okay? So look at that. Ask about it tomorrow if you are struggling with factoring. And we have a lot of non-permissible values that you need to state, and that isn't something that is optional. You have to do that every time, okay? You blow up the common factors, and that's your simplified version, okay? It's factoring and blowing stuff up, maybe multiplying by the reciprocal. Your turn for sure now, okay? So please don't be a spectator, okay? I want you to pause the recording and do this yourself, okay? Oops. So in your first step, right, you would have wrote it out, multiplied by the reciprocal, and you can see at the bottom that you need to blow up all it and end up with that simplified version, okay? And this is a little weird because our non-permissible values are actually variables because we have two variables here. So they're not going to be numerical, they're variable in nature, okay? All right. Tough trinomials, factoring, look it over and see. Ask questions if factoring is an issue, okay? And your assignment is now, I need to check and make sure that this is the one. Hey, you fixed it up, Math 20-1. This is the correct assignment. So if you guys could do the page 537 assignment in your workbook, that's great. And when in doubt, use your formative assignment plan to do it. Okay, I'll see you guys tomorrow when you're working on this particular assignment. See you. And Abby, we're thinking of you and hoping you're getting better. Take care. We'll talk soon.